Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk about all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges that we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we could go from living a life as simply just being sober to a life where we're both sober and happy. Today's topic is something a lot of people struggle with when they first get sober, transitioning from an addictive mindset to a sober mindset. It is one of the most overlooked parts of the recovery process, but it is so important. Addiction isn't just about the substance. It's about the way we think, the way we live, and the way that we handle life. That's why when we remove the substance, we're left with this addictive mindset that we have to unlearn and replace with healthier habits. Today we're going to dive into why that transition is difficult, what makes it feel like there's a void, and how to start filling that gap with positive things. So buckle up. This is going to be a great episode. Welcome back. Let's start by talking about why life in addiction could feel more exciting, even though it is usually in all the wrong ways. One of the things I've noticed, and I'm sure many of you have too, is that addiction has a way of making life feel like a constant roller coaster. It's full of highs and lows. You're chasing the next drink, and that chase gives you this sense of urgency and intensity. Whether it's the thrill of sneaking around, avoiding consequences, or trying to get money to feed your addiction, it feels like you're constantly on the edge. And for many of us, that chaos becomes a kind of addiction in itself. Here's the thing. The excitement in addiction isn't real excitement. It's stress. It's chaos. But when we live in that space long enough, it becomes normal. So when we remove the substance, all of a sudden life feels flat. There's no drama, there's no rush, and what's left can feel, well, pretty boring. Living in addiction is like living in a constant storm with thunder, lightning, and chaos everywhere you turn. When you step into sobriety, it's like the storm has passed. At first, the silence can be uncomfortable, like you're waiting for the next bolt of lightning to strike. But soon, you realize it's not silence. It's the calm after the storm. It is peace. Peace is often what we want so badly when we're in the middle of the storm. But when we reach that place, we find that peace could take time to appreciate when all we're used to is the chaos. And the sense of peace often doesn't feel like peace at all at first. It feels like a void. When you're chasing an addiction, you're always hustling. You're always figuring out how to get your next drink or drug, finding ways to make it through the day, and keeping your addiction fed. It takes a lot of energy, and your mind is always occupied with something. Then, when we get sober, we find that suddenly all that mental energy is free, and the question becomes, what do we do with it? In addiction, you're constantly on a mission. Now that you're sober, you might feel like you don't have anything to chase. And if you don't replace that with something positive, it could start to feel like life has lost its meaning or purpose. This is where a lot of people relapse. Not because they necessarily want to drink or use again, but because they're trying to fill that void. They miss having something to strive for, even if that something was destructive. Imagine you're running a race, but you've been running in the wrong direction. That is addiction. When you finally stop, you turn around and realize you've been running the wrong way in the race. This is the pivotal point in recovery. Usually there are 3 mindsets I see people get into at this stage. You might have experienced one or all of them at some point in your recovery. The first person is sitting down and beating themselves up for running so far in the wrong direction. They look at how far they must go just to return to the starting line. Rather than beginning that walk back, they get stuck in that negative mindset and never get started. The next is the person who keeps going in the wrong direction because we're already going that way, so why turn around now? This might look like a relapse, but it also could come in many other forms. It might be picking up a substance or habit that we deem as less harmful, like seeking comfort in food or numbing ourselves by spending hours and hours just staring at our phones. It is also common to find ourselves in toxic relationships that might be painful, but also give us that chaos and uncertainty that we became used to while in the middle of our addictions. The third mindset is what we should strive for. It is when we realize that the race is not over. Just because we have run in the wrong direction doesn't make the race less important. You still need to find something to run towards. This is what true recovery looks like. It is finding new, meaningful goals to chase, whether it's personal growth, repairing relationships, or discovering a new passion. If you don't, that void could pull you right back into your old habits. And although it may feel like we are so far behind in the race, but in actuality, we are stronger and more resilient. Yes, we have been running in the wrong direction, but we have still gained strength from running. The most driven and determined people I have seen in life are people in recovery who have shifted their energy towards building a better life. Tell us that a dream is too big, too hard, or even impossible, we respond with, "Watch this." Because one thing that addiction has taught us is when we have a mindset to find a way, we could always find a way. We weren't the type of people who decided we couldn't drink or use drugs on a certain day just because we didn't have money. We were the type that always found a way, no matter how challenging the obstacles were. That attitude, when channeled towards chasing a better life instead of addiction, is unstoppable. We could blow through obstacles that others see as just too hard. We could achieve things that others think are impossible because when you have done something like beating an addiction, other obstacles could seem small in comparison. But that drive must be focused or we'll just be burning energy running in circles. We must be driven by a new purpose. When you get sober, one of the best things you could do is start chasing new positive things. For some people, that might mean getting back into old hobbies they left behind during their addiction. For others, it might mean exploring entirely new interests. For me, one of the biggest things was finding a way to help others. I started sponsoring people in AA, and later on, after I decided to go a different direction in my recovery, I found new ways to help people outside of traditional recovery programs. That became my new mission, and it gave me the same sense of purpose that I used to chase in addiction. And here's a key point. Finding purpose doesn't happen overnight. It's something you have to actively seek out. Try new things. Fail at some of them. Succeed at others. Keep searching until you find what lights you up. And it doesn't have to be just one thing. There are many things in my life that provide me joy and fulfillment, and I continue to explore new things constantly. If I find something that provides me happiness, I keep doing it. If I try something and I find that it just doesn't do it for me, I don't keep trying to force it. I move on to trying something else. It is all about staying in the race and focusing on running in the right direction more often than I run in the wrong direction. Here's another important aspect of shifting from Here's another important aspect when shifting from an addictive mindset to a sober mindset. In addiction, you're always hustling. You're constantly in survival mode. That might mean lying, manipulating, or doing whatever it takes to keep the addiction fed. It's exhausting, but it's also familiar. You get used to that constant hustle. When you get sober, the hustle stops. But if you don't shift your mindset, you'll feel like you're missing something. When you get sober, the hustle stops. But if you don't shift your mindset, you'll feel like you're missing something. You might feel restless, like you need to be doing something. And that's where the danger comes in. If you don't replace that addictive hustle with positive growth, you could easily find yourself hustling in the wrong direction again. The good news is that same energy used to survive in addiction can be used to thrive in sobriety. Instead of hustling to feed an addiction, you could hustle to grow your career, improve your relationships, or chase personal goals. It's about shifting from a survival mindset to a growth mindset. However, constantly hustling could also lead to burnout, and many people don't know how to stop hustling at first. One of the hardest parts about getting sober is learning to enjoy the quiet. For a lot of us, addiction filled our lives with noise. The chaos of addiction kept our minds busy, even if it was in a destructive way. When you take that noise away, you're left with stillness. And at first, it could feel uncomfortable. You might even try to fill it with other distractions, like endless scrolling on your phone, binge watching TV, or working yourself into exhaustion. But learning to enjoy the stillness is one of the greatest gifts of sobriety. It's in that stillness that you rediscover who you are, what you love, and what kind of life you want to build. It's where you find peace. The last thing I want to address is one of the biggest obstacles for many people considering getting sober, and that's the fear of boredom. For many of us in recovery, boredom could feel like the enemy. We're so used to living in extremes. We're part of a small group of people who have experienced the full range of human emotions. So the idea of we are part of a small group of people who have experienced the full range of human emotions. So the idea of a calm, normal life can feel scary. But here's the thing, boredom isn't the problem. It's how we react to it. Instead of seeing boredom as something to fear, we could see it as an opportunity. It's a chance to reflect, to slow down, and to start building something new. So if you're struggling to shift from an addictive mindset to a sober mindset, just know that you're not alone. The chaos of addiction might have made life feel more exciting, but real excitement, the kind that lasts, comes from growth, from finding purpose, and from learning to enjoy the stillness. The void you feel in early sobriety isn't a bad thing. It's just space waiting to be filled with something better, and it's up to you to fill the void you feel in early sobriety isn't a bad thing. It's just space waiting to be filled with something better, and it's up to you to fill it with things that truly matter. So here's my challenge for you this week. Take some time to reflect on what you're chasing in your life right now. If you've been feeling that void, ask yourself what positive things you could start pursuing. Whether it's a new hobby, a personal goal, or reconnecting with old passions, start filling that space with something that gives your life meaning and purpose. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and keep living sober and happy.